Dr. Newt Miller has been committed to the education arena since the 1990s, when he converted non-traditionally from the ranks of the engineering field. His research interest lies within educating at potential populations, focusing on the systemic thinking tied to student achievement, effective school cultures, and promoting educational success for all students. In the first part of our conversation, we talked about how inspirational teachers and students have shaped his teaching. Greetings, YouTube. It is wonderful to be able to talk to Dr. Newt Miller, Associate Professor at the University of Arizona Global Campus. He teaches teachers how to be teachers. Thank you so much, Dr. Newt, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to spend some time with you today.
Well, likewise an honor talking with you, Newt. What's something you've learned, Dr. Newt, from one of your most impactful or inspirational teachers?
Wow. I've had the honor to have several, I think, people who've poured into my life. Now, I didn't know that they were doing that at the time. As a matter of fact, a few of them I didn't care for too much, because they were raising the bar for me, and I didn't understand it at the time. But I mean, I've had several, and when people ask me that question, there's a couple that go through my mind. The first one is Mr. Sosha. Okay. He was my 10th grade algebra teacher. He was at this point in time, my family had moved from a more urban arena to one that was a little more suburban. So we went to a school now that was, instead of predominantly Black, it was now predominantly white. So we were the small minority in the school. And the year before, we moved about halfway in the school year before, okay, I had a real rough transition. So I had built this name for myself as a troublemaker, right? And the next school year started, and teachers talk to one another. And when I came to this gentleman's classroom, he pulled me aside before I went in, and he was transparent with me. Said, they told me that you're not such a good student, and said all these things about me. And he said, the jury's still out with me. I don't believe what I hear. I believe what I see. So I just wanted you to know what was being said. And we're going to start over, fresh, just you and I from where we are. And he, gave me that opportunity. So at first, I had a little hump on my shoulders when he told me that, because I was a young guy. I was, 15, 16 years old, in a whole different social arena. So I was already defensive. But he reached out to me first, and he gave me that transparency. And then throughout the course, the time, he found that I was pretty good at math. He was one of the first people to tell me that. And I began to excel in the subject. I actually ended up being an engineer, a civil engineer, in teaching math and science. So anyway, Mr. Sosha, he started this snowball effect in my life, which began, I think, at that point, that whole growth mindset, if you will, phenomena in me. I think he kind of started that process with me to look at myself and see myself as not what people say, but what I choose to be. So, I mean, it wasn't anything super academic. It was really more personal. He reached into my life. He went first to reach out to me, to give me an opportunity to be, all that I possibly could be. So, I mean, I can move on and tell you story after story. I got to tell you this one. So Dr. Bennett.
Please do.
Dr. Bennett, so years went down the road. I went to school. I went to college. I got and I didn't do well at my first attempt at college. I got on the campus and hit the party scene, and partied more than I went to class. And I had a scholarship at the time, and I had to give the scholarship back. So I went in the Marine Corps. I came out of the Marine Corps, and I went to finish, my degrees. And I went to a historically Black college or university called Cheney University. And I had a teacher, Dr. Bennett. Dr. Bennett was her name. And she was teaching African-American literature. And I had to take that literature course, even though I was, doing a pure math degree. I had to take that course, and I didn't want to take it because I didn't see why I would ever need it. So I get in the course, I'm sitting in the back, and she walks into class the first day, and she shuts the door and starts singing. From the time she walks in the door up to, the desk, she starts singing an old Negro spiritual. And she gets to the front of the desk and, takes her stuff out her bag and starts the whole time she's singing. The class is totally quiet, totally silent. My mouth is open. I'm like, totally like, what's next? And she stops singing and then begins to, I'm going to say, push our critical thinking processes in a direction that I've never been, because I really didn't expect literature at that time. I didn't respect it. I was a math and science guy. I thought that's all I ever needed. And she said, what is literature? And, that's the first time I ever saw kind of like a Socratic discussion, an inquiry-based kind of thing taking place. And I walked out of that classroom understanding that literature was anything that any thinking person will ponder at some point in their life. And it just opened up new avenues to me. What her deposit in me was, and I know I'm rambling on, what her deposit in me was that I really never liked school, but I loved to learn. I knew that was necessary. And her deposit in me was that education was the important thing, and that it was something that was meant to liberate you, something that was meant to open avenues to, even if you don't like school, And I was from that point on, I went on in my higher ed career, took an upper trajectory from that course on. And I attribute that to her and how she taught me to think.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for sharing those stories. And again, it's, having those opportunities to get us out of our comfort zones or just make us completely rethink or reevaluate. Thank you for sharing that.
Right.
So an aside, a comment and then a question. So first, Dr. Newt, I just want to say that I so greatly appreciate the talks that you've been giving about at potential students. And if I may summarize, it's a reframing of how we view our students and how our students view themselves. Instead of focusing on deficits with labels like at risk, we're focusing on strengths and possibilities with labels like at potential. Now, I earlier asked what you've learned from your teachers. What's something you've learned from, or what's a way that you've been inspired by one of your at potential students?
Well, I think that throughout my career, I've had the opportunity, and I say opportunity, to serve in some of the what some educators might call the more difficult educational settings in some of our urban arenas. And even now at University of Arizona Global Campus, we are a fully online university with open enrollment, which means we are going to attract at potential students who understand the power of education and how it can change the trajectory of the course of their life, which means that we have to be ready to serve that population. So having said that, man, I'm reaching in my mind because it's like a Rolodex of students that go across your mind.
Yeah.
But I've had a few that kind of stick out in my head. There's one gentleman, and I'll mention a couple. There's one gentleman. He was a ninth grader. When he was in my classroom, I was teaching general science, and first day of school. You know how teachers come in and they want to teach the rules and all the things like that. Well, I realized that by the time the students got to my class, they've been to 4 other teachers that did the same thing, so I don't want any problems, and I want you to want to come to my class. So I start off the first day teaching. We jump right in, and I would start with the scientific method. And I'm dealing with ninth graders. So I know the boys are liking the girls and the girls are liking the boys. So how can we make this scientific method appealing to them? Well, I use the idea of a boy and a girl. So I say, well, listen, everything applies to this. The scientific method applies to everything. I said, listen, you see and talking about, the guys, the young men, you say you see a girl down the hallway and you're interested in her, right? So, you have a hypothesis that she's someone that you may want to know. So now you got to gather some information, and so what do? You go closer and you observe, or you might talk to, you're getting some data, now you got to analyze that data and, see how it works, or if it's, something that you want to use or not. So maybe she's attractive to you. Maybe she's not. Maybe you compatible mentally, or maybe you're not, then you make a decision, you draw some kind of conclusion, and then that'll define your next actions, right? So in a nutshell, I would do that. And, we would go back and forth in the class. Of course, you got teenagers, so you're getting all kinds of good comments and funny things. And so they got to see me as a human and as a person. I got to learn them a little bit on that first day, so they enjoyed themselves. So I'm telling you that story because this young gentleman I'm talking about, he was the athlete. And my sons were athletes, and I was out on the football field, actually standing up in the stands watching a practice. And that young gentleman, he was in my class. I happened to see him walking across the field, and he yells, "Mr. Miller, I'm about that scientific right now." And he points, and there's a girl. Right. So him doing that at that point in my career let me know that there was way more to the eye. There was way more to this young man than the eye could see. Yes. That our students in our schools, we were seeing them as educators based on test scores, based on, information we want them to learn, how we want them to behave in our courses or our classes, whatever that school etiquette was. But this young man took that information and transcended it and was applying it directly that day, such that he could verbalize it. Even though he was cracking a joke, it was really internalized, and learning had taken place. And that let me know at that point that this young man is full of potential. Where else can we go? And I started to dig into my whole, science career of physics and electricity and magnetism and thermodynamics and all those kind of things, and find those concepts and drop them on those students. I had to code switch it, so that it was a way that they could understand. But that's kind of the birth of that whole wanting to pull out the potential of our students and seeing their potential instead of the deficit that we traditionally were looking at our students in that urban arena from. So that was the young man. I don't want to say his name because, because I haven't asked him, but he was one of the students that truly motivated me. Can I tell you one more?
Please do. I'd love to hear another.
So this one was on the college level. And I had done some research with men of color, 1,300 men of color. And I had this gentleman in my course. So it was an online course. I never saw his face. I didn't know he was African-American. He knew I was African-American, but he was in my course, and it was a 6-week-long course. And around week 3, he started to drop off. So, I send out little, what I call missing you emails. I'm missing you, is there anything I can do to help? It's not too late. I have relaxed deadlines, no penalty, whatever. Let's just get it done. I want you to pass. I have your back, that kind of thing. Yeah. He wasn't responding. So it was like around week 4, about halfway through week 4, he finally responded to me. So it's kind of late in the course. And, so we talk, we get on the phone and we talk. He texts me, and then we get on the phone and we talk. And, we come up with a plan of how he could catch up, and take care of things. So this was one of the capstone courses in the grad degree, the Master of Arts of Education grad degree. So it's one of the last 2 courses that they have. And he finished the course. It was the first capstone. And then, I guess he went on to the second capstone, and I didn't see him or didn't think anything of it. I'm on to my next batch of students. Yeah. Well, graduation day comes, and I happen to be the person that's helping to hand out the degrees. So it's a pretty large university. We have about 1,600 students. So there's 2 lines, one coming from each side. They'll come from each side. We'll hand them a degree, make them pause for a second while the person in front of them is taking a picture with either the dean or the provost, and then we move them on, right? Mm-hmm. So I see this gentleman in line, and I see him keep moving back. like, like he keeps moving back. And that's strange to me because usually they want to get their degree, right?
Yeah.
So finally, he ends up being last in line, coming, to me to get his little diploma package so he can take his picture. Well, he comes to me and I go to shake his hand and give him the plaque and say, congratulations, you did it, in an upbeat way. And he says, you don't know who I am, do I? And I was like, no. He said, well, I was in your course and I was having a hard time. And you reached out to me and told me it wasn't too late. And I took you at your word and finally contacted you back. And he said, at first I didn't contact you back because I didn't think you liked Black males, right? Now, so that was strange to me, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't address it because we were standing on stage. About to have the degree out. So he went on and he said, look where we are now. He didn't say, look where I am or look where you are. He said, look where we are now.
Wow.
So I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, well, let's take a look. So we looked out in the arena and said, let's bask in a moment for a second. We did that for about 2-3 seconds and he moved on. Yeah. So after graduation, we have this tradition at our school where the students, they come out of the arena and the faculty, we line up on two sides. We call it the gauntlet. And the students all have to walk through the gauntlet coming out of the arena and we applaud them. It's our last chance to applaud them. So we applaud them. I'm high-fiving and I'm shaking hands and hugging. You did it. You should be proud of yourself. And I see that gentleman coming. So I see him and I pull him to the side and I say, what do you mean you thought I didn't like Black males, right? I mean, I am a Black male. Captain noticed, right? He said, well, you seem to treat us different, right? He said, I looked at when we look into discussion prompts and the different things like that, the way you respond to us is a little more abrupt, a little more different. So I just thought you had some issues with, with Black male. Right. So I was like, OK, well, thanks for that information. I went back and I kind of looked it up. Yeah. And I did see that I was a little more abrupt and I figured out why. It was really my upbringing. My father always taught me, listen, son, you're because my father was born in 1926 in Durham, North Carolina. Yeah. So he lived through the Jim Crow laws and the segregated South, fought in the segregated Navy. I mean, so his perception on life and his reality was a little different than mine would be for my generation, as my children's are for their generation. Yeah. So his perception was, listen, you had to work twice as hard to get half as far, being a Black man. Yeah. So that's what I grew up under. So when I saw other Black men, I thought that my best thing I could do to help them was push them harder than anyone else so that they could, get in the room and make an impact. Yeah. But I had no idea that was coming across as a bias per se. Yeah. So that student, I told that long story to say that student who I still stay in contact with taught me to look at myself, taught me that I needed to be aware of me, even in all the good I was doing and my great intentions. I mean, with all the techniques and methods and strategies that I put in place, those techniques and methods that saved him from having to repeat a course, in his degree. In all of that, I still had to look at me first and be aware of my own, I'm going to say implicit bias, be aware of my own blind side, blind, in just tendencies that may not be, perceived as positively as I mean them. And so I hold those two gentlemen close to my heart, and I know this is going to be on YouTube, and I could tell you stories about some of the young sisters, some of the young ladies that have motivated me and inspired me to as well. But these two came to the top of my head. So please charge it to my head, not my heart. That I didn't mention a young lady. So,
yeah, no, I appreciate that, and sometimes it's it's the stories that come to the mind. But just to kind of recap, just some themes that I very much value. One is making education engaging and relatable. This isn't some just abstract thing. This is like that scientific method.
Right.
That is applicable, whatever. I think that's beautiful. The being personable to our students, letting them know, like, yeah, we care about you. We want you to succeed. And also just that reminder about blind spots. I know I have blind spots. I wish I didn't. I'm trying to work on them, and they're going to keep popping up. And just being in that mindset of, yes, we can make progress, and there's always going to be work to do on that. Always way to improve. And
that's tough. That's tough, Rich. Because as human beings, when we are made aware, I'm going to call them a blind spot, implicit bias, whatever you want to call them in yourself, our natural tendency is to defend.
Yes.
No matter who you are, how good you are, how, consciously competent you are, emotionally intelligent, whatever the case may be, you're going to want to defend first.
Yes.
Because we're always just taking a positive look. I'm going to say everyone's always doing the best they can at all times. I believe that about people. Yeah. Whether it's the best they can to do something positive or something negative, they're doing the best they can. Right? So when someone brings something up about you, you get defensive.
Yep.
And I think it's important for us to own that defensive-ness as quickly as possible so we can move past it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that bothered me. Well, why was that said? Why would someone even think that? Where is that coming from? That may be some truth. Perception is reality. These are the kind of the little quick things I say in my mind. Because as an educator, you're dealing with students from all over the place all the time. Yeah. So you cannot control their perception, their thoughts, how they're receiving. So you got to be ready. It's like you got to be, we used to call it ready position. We used to play football, you got to be ready because the ball's coming and I'm not exactly sure from which direction.
Yeah.
And that's how we have to be with our students. So I constantly am always saying that in my mind. Okay, why are they thinking this? Where did this come from? Is there truth in this? Perception is reality. It may be real, but it may not be true. Okay, before I respond, I own those things first, and then I move forward. I'm not trying to convince a student, but trying to then find out more. Well, tell me more.
Yeah.
Help me understand. And what that does is it makes me now culturally responsive, because what I'm doing is I'm creating a partnership between them from their perspective and their perception of whatever that moment is in that given point in time. Remembering that their perception and their perspective is driven by their past experiences, their cultural competency. So I believe as educators, if we can get fluent in that process really quickly, going first, then we can help students facilitate thinking and further critical thinking and problem solving, in way more productive ways, whether it's about content, whether it's about just natural human growth or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Join us for part 2. Educators are the most powerful people on the planet, as Dr. Newt shares more insight into potential students, encouraging teachers to look farther than they can see with their students.